When a man enters a woman, it is not merely a physical union, it is an energetic revelation. In that moment, two worlds collide, the external desire and the internal truth. The body moves, but the soul speaks. What most people call pleasure, in truth, is a spiritual exchange. It's where the masks fall, where his hidden emotions are silently confessed, and where his true character is exposed without a single word. A man can hide his feelings in conversation. He can disguise his intentions with charm. But when he goes inside a woman, his energy cannot lie. It reveals who he really is, what he truly seeks, and what he secretly fears. Because intimacy, when stripped of illusion, is not just about connection. It is about revelation. The body only magnifies what the heart and mind already carry. And in that sacred moment, when he enters her, the energy of his soul is exposed completely. Now let's explore from the depth of awareness and wisdom what a man really feels in that moment. The 18 inner experiences that unfold beyond the physical act, hidden beneath his surface, yet visible to the one who sees with consciousness. When a man unites with a woman, something deeper than physical touch occurs. The exchange is not merely of the body, but of essence. His actions in that sacred moment reveal far more than his words ever could. What he feels, what he fears, what he secretly longs for, all of it flows into that space. You see, a man cannot hide his energy. He may guard his emotions in conversation, conceal his intentions through silence, but in intimacy, his truth surfaces. The body does not lie. The way he moves, the way he breathes, the way he is present or distracted, these are not random gestures. They are expressions of the inner world. When he seeks love, there is softness in him, a gentleness that listens beyond sound. But when he seeks validation, his energy becomes restless, hungry, searching for something outside of himself to make him feel complete. Every man carries two desires within him, the desire to connect and the desire to escape. One brings peace, the other brings exhaustion. When he is centered, when he respects the sacredness of the moment, his touch is guided by stillness. He is aware of her presence, aware of her breath, aware of the life that moves through both of them. But when he is disconnected, he approaches intimacy as a way to prove something, to feed the ego that whispers, "I must be wanted." And that is where he loses himself, because no act of pleasure can fill the emptiness of an unattended soul. A conscious man enters that moment not to take, but to give. He gives attention not only to the body before him, but to the energy that surrounds them. He listens to silence, to the pauses, to what cannot be spoken. This awareness transforms the encounter from an act of indulgence into an act of reverence. In that space, he begins to realize that what he offers emotionally will always return to him. When his intention is pure, the energy flows in harmony. When his heart is clouded with confusion or self-interest, the energy becomes heavy, chaotic, unbalanced. You can always feel the difference. When a man's heart is open, presence radiates from him. He doesn't rush. He doesn't seek to dominate. He simply allows himself to exist fully in the now, breathing with life rather than fighting against it. But when he is bound by ego, his movements are mechanical. His body may be close, but his soul remains distant. The woman can feel it even if he cannot, because women sense energy long before they process words. They know when a man is with them in spirit and when he is simply trying to fill his own void. That is why intimacy is not only a physical experience. It is a mirror. It shows a man the level of his awareness. When he approaches that union from his higher self, his energy calms both souls. When he approaches it from his lower self, he drains not only her, but himself. True connection begins only when a man understands that his strength does not lie in how much he can take, but in how much peace he can maintain in the presence of vulnerability. The body may follow rhythm, but the spirit follows intention. A man who is present will notice the smallest shifts, the warmth of her skin, the rhythm of her breathing, the energy between them that expands and contracts. Each of these signs is communication, though not in words. It is life speaking through them. To be conscious in that space means to listen to life itself. But a man who is unaware, who has not learned to sit with his own emotions, will rush through that sacred silence. He cannot listen because silence makes him uncomfortable. It reminds him of everything he has not yet faced within himself. That is why awareness is the key to intimacy. It is not about performance, it is about perception. A man must learn to perceive energy, to recognize that his emotions are not separate from his actions. When he touches with impatience, it is his inner tension that moves through him. When he touches with gentleness, it is his calmness that flows outward. He gives to the woman what he carries within. If he holds anger, she will feel resistance. If he holds peace, she will feel safety. The energy never lies. Presence is the highest form of intimacy. To be fully aware of oneself while connecting with another is the essence of unity. In that space, both bodies become teachers. The man learns about surrender, the woman learns about trust. Together they meet at the intersection of vulnerability and strength. And in that moment, the man realizes that intimacy is not a goal to achieve, but a sacred responsibility to honor. You see, when a man is guided by ego, he believes he must perform, impress, or dominate. But when he is guided by consciousness, he realizes that true power is silent. It doesn't need to prove itself. It observes, it breathes, it flows. His awareness becomes his strength. And through that awareness, he begins to feel beyond touch. He feels energy merging, emotions rising, hearts synchronizing. It is no longer about desire, it becomes about harmony. Every man must eventually face this truth. Intimacy exposes his state of being. If he is restless inside, he will seek to escape through pleasure. If he is peaceful inside, he will find connection through presence. What he experiences in that moment is a reflection of his own mind. Therefore, to deepen his connection with another, he must first deepen his connection with himself. He must learn to be alone without feeling lonely, to feel his own emotions without fear, to face his own emptiness without trying to escape it. Only then can he enter a space with another and remain whole. The body is simply the bridge. The real meeting happens through awareness. A man's energy flows from his inner state, not his outer action. When he brings stillness, the moment becomes sacred. When he brings chaos, the moment becomes restless. This is why every intimate connection leaves an energetic trace. It carries the vibration of what each person brought into it. Consciousness purifies. Unconsciousness confuses. So a man must ask himself before every act of closeness, am I here to connect or am I here to distract myself? Am I here to share or to prove something? The answer determines what kind of energy he creates. Because every exchange, even in silence, writes a story in both souls, and that story will echo long after the moment ends. When he becomes aware of this truth, he moves differently. He speaks less, listens more. He becomes gentle without losing strength. His presence becomes healing, and the woman feels it. Not just in her body, but in her spirit. Because when a man moves from awareness, his energy says, you are safe here. That is the essence of masculine consciousness. Not domination, but devotion. To be conscious in intimacy is to recognize the sacred in another human being. It is to look beyond form and see essence. It is to approach closeness not as an act of possession, but as an exchange of life. And when a man reaches that state of awareness, his emotions no longer control him. He no longer seeks validation through touch. He finds fulfillment in the stillness of connection, where two beings meet without masks, without fear, without pretense. That is the truth of what a man feels when he becomes aware in that moment. Beneath every physical motion lies an emotional revelation. The body may move outwardly, but the soul moves inwardly. And through that inward movement, he discovers that intimacy is not about entering another, but about returning to himself, returning to that place of truth, presence, and peace within. When the intention is pure, the moment feels calm. When the heart is divided, even pleasure becomes restless. You can sense this difference immediately, because energy does not lie. A man might smile, speak softly, and appear confident, but his inner turbulence cannot be disguised once he enters the space of deep connection. The body always echoes what the mind conceals. In intimacy, there is no mask strong enough to hide the truth of emotion. A man who carries confusion will transfer confusion. A man who carries peace will radiate peace. This is why the most powerful thing a man can bring to closeness is not performance, but presence. It is his calm attention that steadies the energy between two souls. When his awareness is scattered, the moment becomes heavy. When his heart is still, both bodies begin to breathe in harmony. A man does not often realize how deeply he mirrors the energy of the woman before him. Just as water takes the shape of its container, his energy molds to what he receives. When she carries unresolved pain, he feels a weight that he cannot name. When she carries warmth and openness, he feels expansion without understanding why. This is not a matter of control. It is the silent law of energy exchange. Intimacy is not about who leads or follows. It is about resonance. When one is restless, the other feels unease. When one is peaceful, the other feels grounding. The greatest form of understanding between man and woman happens beyond language, in the invisible flow of emotion. That is why a man must cultivate awareness before entering the sacred space of connection. If he is unconscious, he will absorb energy without realizing it. He will mistake her emotions for his own and afterward feel drained, confused, or disconnected. But when he is conscious, he observes the energy with compassion. He does not take it, he transforms it. He becomes a vessel that turns tension into calm, fear into trust. This is the quiet power of a mindful man. His presence itself heals. When he is stable within, his energy becomes a sanctuary, not a storm. The need for control often hides fear. Many men believe that to feel safe, they must dominate the moment, guide it, or prove themselves. Yet control is the illusion of safety, not the reality of it. True confidence comes from surrender. When a man can surrender to presence, when he can let go of the outcome and simply feel what is, he becomes powerful in a different way. He is no longer moved by the need to be superior. He is moved by the desire to be sincere. Control is born from insecurity. Connection is born from trust. When a man begins to trust life, to trust himself, and to trust the energy of another, his touch changes. His intention softens. His awareness deepens. At that moment, he stops treating intimacy as an achievement and begins to see it as an exchange of energy that requires respect. He begins to realize that what he gives emotionally will always return to him in a different form. If he brings anxiety, he will meet resistance. If he brings calmness, he will meet surrender. When he understands this, he no longer approaches closeness as a conquest, but as communion. Every movement becomes an act of mindfulness, every breath an offering of peace. He learns that the more present he is, the less he needs to control, because energy in harmony moves naturally. Sometimes, however, he feels something he cannot explain, a heaviness, a sadness, a sudden emotional wave. This often happens when the woman carries unresolved emotions from her past, and in that moment of openness, her energy seeks release. The conscious man does not run from this, he witnesses it. He holds space for it. He does not take responsibility for her healing, but he becomes part of it through presence. His awareness acts like still water. It reflects without judgment, absorbs without losing form. This is the essence of emotional maturity: to feel without reacting, to see without controlling, to allow without losing oneself. The unconscious man cannot do this. He becomes overwhelmed by the emotional current. He may feel drained or confused because he does not yet know how to hold energy without absorbing it. His desire to control intensifies, believing that stability can be forced, but stability can only be cultivated. It arises from awareness, not dominance. He must learn that presence is strength. To stay open when vulnerability appears is the greatest courage a man can show. Energy exchange in intimacy is not just emotional, it is spiritual. The man who carries peace becomes a source of balance. The woman who feels safe in his presence begins to unfold, to express, to breathe freely. When both energies meet in awareness, something larger than the two begins to flow through them. It is not his energy or hers, it is the life force that connects all. This is what turns ordinary closeness into sacred connection. It is no longer about desire, it becomes about alignment. Two souls meeting without fear, without defense, without demand. The man who reaches this understanding begins to view the experience differently. He sees that every moment of connection is a reflection of his own state. If he is anxious, he feels chaos. If he is peaceful, he feels unity. Therefore, he takes responsibility for his own energy before he shares it. He learns to ground himself, to breathe deeply, to listen to silence. He enters not to seek approval or escape loneliness, but to share awareness. His focus shifts from taking to giving, from proving to being. That shift changes everything. Because energy always responds to energy, a conscious man can transform even a restless moment into stillness simply by remaining calm. He no longer reacts to emotional waves, he rides them with patience. His steadiness becomes a language of its own, one that says, "I am here." That presence builds trust stronger than words ever could. And through that trust, both energies begin to rise together. He feels the unity not just with the woman before him, but with existence itself. This level of connection cannot be faked. It demands inner clarity. A man must face his fears of loss, his fear of inadequacy, his fear of emotional exposure. When he no longer resists these fears, they lose control over him. Then, in closeness, he no longer hides behind ego. He shows up as he is, aware, grounded, sincere. The woman feels this authenticity and her own heart relaxes. It becomes a meeting of two energies, unmasked, unguarded, and awake. Every connection reflects the consciousness of the participants. Awareness creates harmony. Unconsciousness creates confusion. The moment a man chooses awareness over control, his energy transforms. It becomes a stabilizing force, not just in intimacy, but in life itself. His presence brings peace where there was tension, clarity where there was noise. And in that space, he finally understands that connection is not about possessing another. It is about realizing the sacred unity that already exists within and between them. Every human being carries within him a field of unexpressed emotion. It lives below the surface of the personality, under the carefully constructed mask that faces the world. When a man enters a space of deep connection with another, this hidden field begins to stir. The nearness of another soul acts as a mirror. It awakens what has long been silent. Guilt rises first, not as punishment, but as remembrance. Remembrance of the ways he has ignored his own heart, of the moments he chose distraction over truth. Longing follows, the deep ache for something real, something unfiltered by pretense. Then pride, shame, fear, each emotion comes to visit, asking to be seen. In ordinary life, he can escape these visitors. He can fill his days with tasks, screens, noise. But in the stillness of closeness, he cannot. The shared breath, the slowed rhythm, the eye contact that lingers too long, All of these dissolve the distance between him and his hidden self. The woman before him becomes a symbol of what he seeks and what he avoids. She is not his opponent, she is his mirror. Through her openness, he sees where he is closed. Through her calm, he realizes his own restlessness. Through her tenderness, he feels his resistance to softness. At this moment, guilt can transform into awareness if he allows it. The guilt is not meant to trap him, it is meant to wake him. It says, "You have been living from the surface. Come back to depth." But many men, when they feel this rising discomfort, retreat. They move faster, speak louder, distract themselves with intensity. They do not realize that they are fleeing from their own reflection. Awareness demands courage, because to see oneself clearly is to give up the illusion of control. When he dares to stay present, something profound begins to unfold. The sensations of the body fade into the background. The sensations of the heart take over. He begins to sense subtle waves moving through him, emotions that were locked now seeking release. He may feel sadness without reason, joy without cause. This is not confusion, it is purification. The energy that was stagnant starts to move, and movement brings clarity. In unconscious intimacy, a man uses the other person as a tool to escape himself. In conscious intimacy, he meets himself through the other. The first drains energy, the second restores it. This is the difference between indulgence and meditation. Meditation does not mean sitting on a cushion. It means being awake to what is happening now. When he connects with awareness, every touch, every breath, every pause becomes a prayer. He feels the miracle of being alive, the sacredness of sharing space with another soul. But for this awakening to happen, the man must stop objectifying the moment. He must stop seeing the woman as an experience and start seeing her as an energy field equal to his own. Only then does the exchange turn from taking to receiving, from grasping to gratitude. Gratitude changes everything. It softens the edges of pride. It turns guilt into humility. It makes shame unnecessary because awareness itself becomes forgiveness. A man who has spent years disconnected from his emotions may find this awakening overwhelming. He may feel as though the ground beneath him has dissolved. Old memories appear without warning. He might remember the first time he was rejected, the first time he felt unseen. He realizes that he has carried these invisible wounds into every relationship since. The connection before him now acts as a healer, not because the other person is fixing him, but because the energy between them is finally strong enough to show him what needs to be healed. The body remembers everything the mind forgets. When a man learns to listen to the body without fear, he accesses wisdom far older than his thoughts. Every tightness, every expansion, every subtle vibration carries information about the state of his being. When he notices tension, instead of fighting it, he breathes into it. When he feels warmth, he allows gratitude to flow through him. Slowly, he begins to experience intimacy as a mirror of consciousness. The more awake he is, the more harmonious the experience becomes. At first, the practice is difficult. The ego wants control. It wants to measure, compare, evaluate. The conscious man realizes that none of these bring depth. Control restricts energy, surrender frees it. To surrender does not mean to be weak. It means to allow truth to move through you without resistance. When he practices surrender, he becomes sensitive to the smallest energetic shifts. He feels when fear arises, and instead of hiding it, he breathes through it. He notices when tenderness appears, and instead of fearing vulnerability, he welcomes it. When both partners are present, their energies begin to align naturally. There is no need for force. A rhythm appears that belongs to neither of them, and yet carries both. This is the meditation of connection. Two becoming one, not by merging identities, but by merging awareness. In that state, words are unnecessary. The silence speaks louder than any confession. The man feels expanded, not because of pleasure, but because the boundaries of his self temporarily dissolve. He experiences, if only for moments, what the mystics call unity. Then comes the test. After the connection, when the energy settles, does he feel peace or emptiness? If peace arises, it means he remained conscious. He allowed love to flow through him without grasping. If emptiness appears, it means he used the moment to escape himself and now must face the void he temporarily silenced. This is how every intimate experience becomes a teaching. It tells him where he stands on the path of awareness. The more conscious he becomes, the less he seeks stimulation and the more he values stillness. He starts to see that what he truly desires is not excitement but presence. Presence is what fills the soul. Excitement only distracts it. He begins to treat every encounter, even outside intimacy, as an opportunity to practice awareness. Listening deeply becomes as meaningful as any physical connection. Eye contact becomes meditation. Silence becomes communion. In this transformation, the man also learns compassion. He realizes that the woman before him carries her own history of wounds, fears, and hopes. He no longer sees her reactions as personal attacks or mysteries to solve. He understands that every person reflects the level of peace they have within. This understanding makes him gentler, less reactive, more patient. He no longer needs to conquer, he desires to understand. The energy between them grows lighter, more trusting. Awareness changes the quality of love. It turns it from transaction to transmission. Instead of two people trading comfort, they begin sharing consciousness. The energy becomes luminous. They sense each other without effort, communicate without words. The man feels protective, not in a possessive way, but in a sacred way, protective of the harmony that awareness has created. He recognizes that this awareness is fragile. It must be nurtured with honesty, silence, and respect. This transformation does not make him perfect. It makes him real. He still feels fear, anger, and doubt, but he no longer hides from them. He lets these emotions pass through him like weather through the sky. In this transparency, his relationships change. People trust him because his presence feels authentic. He listens more and talks less. He begins to live the same way he connects, with awareness, gratitude, and a deep respect for the energy he shares with others. Conscious connection becomes a form of spiritual training. It teaches him patience, humility, empathy. It shows him that love is not found, it is cultivated. Every breath, every glance, every act of kindness waters the seed of awareness. The more he practices, the more stable his inner world becomes. And from that stability he gives, not out of need, but out of fullness. There are moments when old habits return, when he slips back into unconscious patterns, seeking validation, fearing rejection, acting from pride. But now he notices that noticing is victory. Awareness does not demand perfection, it only asks for remembrance. The moment he remembers, the spell breaks. He breathes, centers himself, and the flow of energy restores. This is how transformation happens, not through dramatic awakenings, but through small moments of remembering who you are. When a man reaches this understanding, every relationship becomes sacred. He sees that his energy influences the entire field around him. His calmness calms others. His honesty invites honesty. His silence heals noise. This awareness turns daily life into a meditation. He begins to carry the same reverence he once reserved for special moments into every interaction, with friends, with strangers, with nature, with himself. In this state, he knows that true intimacy is not limited to the physical realm. It is the meeting of consciousness with consciousness, life with life. Every person he encounters becomes a reflection of the divine presence within him. And through these reflections, he keeps polishing the mirror of his soul until only clarity remains. The guilt, the pride, the shame that once haunted him become teachers he now thanks, for they led him here, to awareness, to peace, to love that asks for nothing and yet gives everything. He finally understands that awakening is not escape from humanity, it is the deep acceptance of it. The same emotions that once bound him are now instruments of compassion. He sees that every being, no matter how unconscious, is on the same journey, seeking to remember their own light. His heart expands with patience. He stops demanding perfection from himself or others. In that surrender, energy flows freely again. He becomes both grounded and open, disciplined and gentle, masculine and receptive. The man who once moved through life seeking validation now moves through life giving validation. He does not ask to be seen, he sees. He does not demand love, he becomes love, and the world responds in kind, because energy always mirrors consciousness. Wherever he goes, peace follows. Not the peace of quiet surroundings, but the peace of an awakened heart. This is what happens when he allows awareness to guide him instead of impulse. The emotions that once ruled him become allies. The longing becomes devotion, the guilt becomes wisdom, the pride becomes confidence without arrogance, the shame becomes humility. Every aspect of his being integrates into harmony. He no longer divides his life into sacred and ordinary. He lives as though everything is sacred, and in that realization, he finds the truth that all masters point to, that what we seek outside is already within. The external connection only reveals the internal state. When he honors that truth, he becomes free, not detached, but deeply connected to life itself. His every act becomes an expression of mindfulness, every connection a celebration of presence, every breath a reminder that to be alive and aware is the highest form of love. When a man begins to awaken within himself, something subtle happens. He starts to realize that the world he sees outside is a reflection of what lives inside. What he perceives in others is a mirror of his own consciousness. When he meets a woman who stirs something deep within him, it is not merely attraction, it is recognition. It is as though life has placed before him a reflection of his own light and his own shadow. In that moment, he stands before a mirror that shows him who he truly is. The emotions that arise are not random. They are responses of the soul to the possibility of awakening. He feels drawn because something in her calls forth something in him that has been dormant, something sacred that longs to breathe again. This is why true connection feels overwhelming. It carries the power to reveal. When a man has not yet awakened, he seeks validation through possession. He believes that closeness is about control, about proving his worth, about fulfilling his desire. But when awareness grows, he begins to see that what he truly seeks is not ownership, but understanding. The woman before him becomes a teacher, not through her words, but through her energy, her silence, her gaze, her presence. All of it invites him to meet himself. And when he allows himself to truly see her, he is also seen. This is not a meeting of bodies, but of awareness. It is an inner unfolding where the masks of performance fall away and the truth of his being begins to shine through. Yet this is also where fear often enters. For most men, vulnerability is the most frightening territory. To open the heart means to risk being seen without defense, to allow someone to glimpse the parts of himself that he has spent years hiding. When a man stands before a woman who can feel him deeply, his instinct may be to retreat. He senses that she can read his silence, sense his hesitation, and perceive his contradictions. And for a man who has not made peace with himself, this transparency feels unbearable. So he distances, he jokes, he intellectualizes. He does everything possible to protect the illusion of control. But every act of avoidance only strengthens the barrier between him and his own soul. True connection demands courage. It asks a man to walk through the fear of being exposed, to embrace the trembling within his chest as a sign that he is alive. It requires him to understand that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the ability to remain open despite it. When he begins to trust this process, he realizes that he has nothing to lose by being authentic. The power he once sought through dominance, through conquest, through resistance, begins to transform into a different kind of power. The power of presence. In presence, there is no need to impress, no need to perform. He simply is. And in that stillness, he becomes magnetic. A man who meets a woman with awareness feels something profound shifting inside him. He no longer sees her as a source of pleasure or validation, but as a reflection of the divine feminine, the aspect of life that nurtures, awakens, and restores balance. Through her, he begins to understand his own inner feminine, the softness he once rejected, the empathy he suppressed, the tenderness he was taught to hide. And in recognizing this, he heals. For too long, men have been told that sensitivity is weakness, that emotion is something to conquer. But the truth is the opposite. Emotion is the path through which a man becomes whole. Without emotional intelligence, strength becomes rigidity. Without compassion, confidence becomes arrogance. In the presence of the feminine, a man learns that surrender is not defeat, it is liberation. To surrender does not mean to lose power, but to align with it. When he lets go of the need to control the outcome, he discovers that he can flow with life rather than fight against it. This surrender allows him to access deeper wisdom, the kind that does not come from logic, but from awareness. And it is in this surrender that intimacy becomes a mirror of enlightenment. The union between two conscious beings is not about escape, but about revelation. Each meeting is an invitation to dissolve the ego, to taste the stillness that lies beyond identity. But such awakening does not come without resistance. The man must face the shadows that rise within him, the jealousy, the insecurity, the fear of not being enough. These emotions surface not to punish him, but to purify him. They show him where love cannot yet flow freely. If he dares to sit with them, without blaming or running, something begins to shift. The noise of the mind quiets. The stories of unworthiness start to dissolve. He begins to feel peace, not because everything outside is perfect, but because he no longer fights with what is. This is maturity, when a man can face his own chaos with compassion and still stand steady in love. Every man carries within him the memory of both creation and destruction. His masculine energy is designed to build, to protect, to move forward. But when it is disconnected from the feminine within him, it becomes restless, hungry, and destructive. It seeks to dominate rather than harmonize. When he reconnects with the softness of his heart, his actions begin to carry wisdom. He learns that true masculinity is not about overpowering others, but about mastering himself. It is the art of standing firm yet gentle, decisive yet kind, powerful yet humble. This balance is what transforms a man into a presence that others can trust. When awareness deepens, a man begins to realize that every connection he experiences is sacred. Every woman he encounters holds a mirror to his consciousness. Some mirrors are gentle, others are fierce, but all are meant to awaken him. When he understands this, he no longer blames or idealizes others. He observes, he learns, he grows. He understands that love is not found through another, it is revealed through the meeting. Every encounter is a lesson in presence, every attraction a call to self-awareness. And in time, he realizes that intimacy is not about taking something from another person. It is about dissolving the illusion of separation. When two energies meet in awareness, what truly happens is that the universe recognizes itself. The man and the woman become instruments through which life expresses its unity. This is why awakened connection feels divine. It is not two people completing each other. It is two beings remembering that they were never incomplete. For a man to reach this understanding, he must die to the idea of who he thinks he is. The persona, the pride, the fear of appearing weak, all must fall away. This inner death is painful, but necessary, because only when the false self dissolves can the true self emerge. And when he meets another from this place of truth, there is no longer any need to prove, to chase, to possess. There is only presence. Presence is love without condition. It is awareness meeting awareness. It is what every human being longs for, even when they do not realize it. The path of awareness transforms intimacy into meditation. Each touch, each glance, each silence becomes sacred because it is filled with consciousness. Nothing is casual anymore. Every moment becomes an offering, a way of saying I see you. Not the image, not the mask, but the essence behind it. When a man reaches this point, his relationships no longer drain him, they elevate him. Because now, he approaches connection, not as a beggar, but as a giver. He gives presence, honesty, attention, peace. And because his giving comes without expectation, he receives more than he ever imagined. Life begins to respond to his frequency. He attracts experiences that reflect his new state of being. The more aware he becomes, the more he realizes that love was never something to find. It was something to become. Every encounter is sacred when seen through the eyes of awareness. Every relationship, whether it lasts a moment or a lifetime, contributes to awakening. What truly matters is not how long it lasts, but how deeply one is transformed by it. For a man to love consciously is to honor the divine within himself and within the other. It is to walk the path of balance, where strength and softness coexist, where power serves love, and where love reveals truth. When this understanding takes root, he no longer fears losing anyone because he has found himself. And from that center, he meets others not with need, but with freedom. That is the moment when love becomes unconditional, when connection becomes sacred, and when the masculine finally finds peace in the heart of the feminine. There comes a moment in every man's life when he begins to realize that the true battle has never been between him and the world, but between him and himself. For a long time, he may chase success, power, or admiration, thinking that these are the keys that will make him feel whole. But sooner or later, he begins to sense the emptiness that lingers behind achievement. He sees that even when he wins, something inside remains restless. This realization is not failure. It is awakening. It is the beginning of his journey back home to himself. When a man finally starts to look inward, he confronts not only his desires, but also his wounds, his doubts, and the parts of himself he has long denied. The first thing he must face is his shadow. The shadow is the part of him that holds everything he tried to hide, the fears, the regrets, the unspoken emotions. For most men, the shadow forms early. Society teaches boys to suppress what is soft, to ignore what is painful, and to pretend that they are always in control. Over time, he begins to wear masks, one for strength, one for charm, one for detachment. But beneath these layers lives the raw truth of who he is. When he begins to awaken, the shadow starts to surface. He might feel anger, confusion, sadness, or guilt. He might even resist, trying to return to old patterns of distraction. But awareness doesn't allow escape. It keeps calling him back, whispering, "There is more to you than what you show." When a man finally allows himself to see his shadow, not with judgment, but with compassion, something extraordinary happens. He begins to understand that his darkness was never his enemy. It was his teacher. The parts of himself he rejected were only waiting to be integrated. Every flaw reveals a need for understanding. Every mistake carries a message. Through this process, he begins to heal not by becoming perfect, but by becoming whole. He no longer needs to hide behind achievements or appearances because he has made peace with what lives inside him. He understands that true confidence is not built on the illusion of perfection, but on self-acceptance. This is the transformation that allows a man to love deeply. Because until he accepts himself, he cannot truly open to another. Love becomes complicated when it grows from fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. But when a man learns to stand calmly within his own being, love becomes simple again. He gives because giving feels natural. He stays because presence feels effortless. He no longer confuses possession with connection. He no longer seeks a partner to fill his emptiness because he has found peace within his solitude. This is the essence of emotional maturity, to connect not out of need, but out of awareness. As he continues to grow, he starts to understand that love is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is a state of being. It is what flows naturally when resistance ends. The woman who meets such a man can feel this difference immediately. His energy is stable, his gaze is grounded, his touch is mindful. He listens not only to her words, but to her silence. He no longer rushes to fix or to prove, he simply witnesses. This stillness creates safety, and in safety, real intimacy blossoms. Because true closeness does not require constant expression. It requires presence, and presence is what the awakened man begins to embody. But awareness also brings responsibility. The more conscious a man becomes, the more he must learn to hold his energy with integrity. His words carry weight, his silence carries energy, and his actions influence not only others, but the very vibration of his life. The awakened man realizes that power without awareness is dangerous. It can manipulate, harm, or destroy. But power with awareness becomes a force of healing. It can protect, uplift, and inspire. That is why the journey of self-awareness is not only personal, it is sacred. It transforms the masculine from a force of control into a force of creation. Every relationship a man enters after awakening becomes a reflection of his inner state. If he remains unhealed, his relationships become mirrors of chaos. But when he grows in awareness, they become mirrors of peace. This is why life keeps repeating lessons until one learns them. The people who challenge him the most are not punishments, they are guides showing him where he still resists growth. When he learns to see others through this lens, he stops reacting with anger or blame. Instead, he observes. He asks, "What is this moment trying to teach me about myself?" This question alone changes everything. It shifts him from the victim of life to the student of life. As this awareness deepens, the man begins to sense energy more clearly. He notices the difference between connection and attachment, between love and desire, between truth and illusion. He understands that every interaction is an exchange of energy. When he meets someone, he doesn't just hear their words, he feels their vibration. He recognizes that attraction can come from two places, from the soul or from the wound. Attraction born of the soul feels peaceful, expansive, calm. Attraction born of the wound feels intense, chaotic, and consuming. One nurtures growth, the other feeds addiction. The wise man learns to discern between the two. He does not chase intensity anymore, he seeks harmony. The deeper he goes, the more he understands that the purpose of relationships is not to satisfy the ego, but to awaken the spirit. Every bond has a purpose, and every ending carries meaning. When love changes form, it is not failure, it is transformation. The man who has reached this level of awareness does not cling to people out of fear. He lets them go with gratitude, understanding that what is meant for him cannot pass him by. Detachment does not mean coldness, it means trust. It is the understanding that love must flow freely to remain pure. Through all of this, humility becomes his greatest strength. The The man who once sought recognition now seeks understanding. The one who once wanted to be admired now desires to serve. He realizes that wisdom is not measured by how much he knows, but by how gently he can leave. The more he grows, the less he needs to prove. The less he speaks of enlightenment, the more he embodies it. This is the paradox of spiritual maturity. The closer one gets to truth, the quieter one becomes. Silence becomes the language of wisdom. In that silence, he feels connected to something greater than himself, something timeless, vast, and deeply compassionate. In the presence of such a man, others begin to feel calm. His energy soothes rather than provokes, grounds rather than confuses. He no longer needs to dominate rooms because his stillness carries more influence than noise ever could. People may not understand what draws them to him, but it is his consciousness that they feel. He has become aligned with life itself. This alignment gives him clarity, and from that clarity flows purpose. He begins to live not for status, not for validation, but for truth. Each day becomes a meditation in motion. His work, his conversations, his actions, all become expressions of his awareness. He does not separate spirituality from daily life. He brings mindfulness into everything he does. When he listens with his whole being. When he acts with intention. When he loves with presence. This is what makes him powerful. Not his strength over others, but his harmony with himself. However, this awareness does not mean that pain disappears. Life continues to test him. Challenges still arise. Emotions still fluctuate. People still disappoint. But what changes is his relationship with suffering. He no longer resists it. He learns from it. He understands that pain, too, has intelligence. It arrives to show him where he is still attached, where he still identifies with the transient rather than the eternal. He meets pain with awareness, not escape. In doing so, pain transforms into wisdom. Such a man no longer looks for happiness in fleeting experiences. He seeks peace instead. Happiness depends on conditions. Peace does not. Peace comes from alignment, with oneself, with truth, with life as it is. When peace becomes his foundation, he can navigate both joy and sorrow without losing himself. This is freedom. The freedom to remain centered no matter what happens outside. When a man reaches this inner stability, love becomes effortless. He does not try to impress or persuade. He simply radiates authenticity. The people meant for him are drawn by his frequency, not by his effort. His relationships become mirrors of truth, not performances of need. The woman who meets him feels seen, not for her roles or appearances, but for her essence. He recognizes her not as an object of desire, but as a reflection of the divine balance of existence. Through her, he honors the life force that flows through all things. Every moment with her becomes sacred, not because of romance, but because of awareness. He realizes that connection is not sustained by words or promises, but by consciousness. When he is fully present, even silence becomes intimacy. When he is absent, even words cannot create closeness. Presence is the foundation of love, and love is the language of awareness. As awareness matures, he stops seeking meaning outside himself. He sees that the outer world is a reflection of the inner one. If he wants peace, he must cultivate peace within. If he wants truth, he must live truth. This responsibility frees him because it gives him power over his own destiny. He no longer waits for life to change. He becomes the change. He realizes that every thought, every word, every action shapes his reality. The universe responds not to his wishes, but to his vibration. And so he chooses to live consciously, to walk, speak, and love in alignment with awareness. Each breath becomes a reminder that he is part of something infinite. Each encounter becomes an opportunity to serve that infinity with compassion. He learns to see divinity not as something distant, but as something living within him and within every being he meets. When a man lives in this way, he no longer fears the unknown. Because he has touched stillness, he trusts life. Because he has met his shadow, he trusts himself. And because he has opened his heart, he trusts love. In this trust, he becomes free, not from the world, but within it. When a man begins to awaken deeply, he comes to a profound realization that every connection he forms is not random, but part of his spiritual curriculum. Life places certain people before him not to please him, but to teach him. Some will awaken his joy, others will expose his wounds, and a few will mirror his deepest fears. Every interaction carries a purpose, and awareness allows him to see the sacredness in all of them. In the beginning, he may still view others through the lens of desire or attachment, but as his consciousness grows, his perception shifts. He no longer asks, "What can I get from this person?" but "What is life showing me through this person?" This single shift transforms his relationships from transactions into revelations. He begins to see that every relationship is a reflection of his inner state. When he meets someone who triggers him, it is not a coincidence. It is an invitation to heal what remains unresolved within. When he feels deep attraction, it is not only chemistry but resonance, the alignment or imbalance of energies. Every emotional reaction becomes a mirror, reflecting the places where awareness still needs to enter. This is how life communicates with him, not through words, but through experiences. The wise man listens not only with his ears, but with his soul. He learns that love is not the possession of another person, but the expansion of awareness through connection. To love someone is to recognize oneself within them. It is to see the divine essence that breathes through both souls. When he looks into another's eyes and feels something awaken, he is witnessing the infinite through a temporary form. This realization humbles him. It dissolves the illusion of control, the fantasy of ownership, and the need for certainty. Because what is sacred cannot be possessed, it can only be honored. In his earlier years, he may have mistaken intensity for depth. He may have believed that the more passion he felt, the stronger the love must be. But through awakening, he discovers that true love is not chaotic, it is peaceful. Passion born of unconsciousness burns fast and consumes itself, but love born of awareness glows steadily and illuminates. It does not destroy, it refines. He learns to differentiate between emotional addiction and soulful connection. Emotional addiction pulls him toward drama and validation, while soulful connection draws him toward truth and peace. This discernment is one of the great lessons of maturity. A man who has awakened to awareness begins to see that love requires space as much as closeness. When he loves unconsciously, he clings because he fears loss. When he loves consciously, he allows because he trusts life. Trust becomes his foundation, not blind trust in people, but deep trust in the intelligence of the universe. He understands that what is meant for him cannot miss him, and what is not meant for him cannot stay. This understanding sets him free from the need to control outcomes. It teaches him the beauty of non-attachment, the ability to love fully without fear of losing. Non-attachment does not mean indifference, it means presence without possession. It is love purified of ego. He realizes that to hold space for another person's growth, he must first hold space for his own. He must learn to witness his emotions without letting them dictate his actions. When he feels triggered, instead of projecting blame, he pauses. He breathes. He observes the movement of energy within him. He asks himself, what is this emotion showing me about my attachment, my fear, my expectation? By turning inward, he transforms reactivity into reflection. This is emotional alchemy. the art of turning pain into wisdom. The more he practices this awareness, the more he embodies peace. People around him can feel it. His energy becomes steady, his words carry calm, his presence feels grounding. Others may not understand why they feel safe with him, but it is because he has stopped fighting life. He has stopped resisting what is. This surrender gives him quiet strength. It allows him to face challenges without panic, to love without dependence, and to let go without bitterness. There comes a time when he begins to understand the deeper nature of masculine and feminine energy. He sees that they are not in opposition, but in dance. The masculine is the structure, the consciousness, the still lake. The feminine is the movement, the emotion, the flowing river. When they meet in balance, harmony arises. But when the masculine becomes rigid or the feminine becomes chaotic, imbalance follows. A conscious man learns to cultivate his inner structure so that the feminine, whether within himself or in another, feels safe to flow. His presence becomes like a mountain, strong yet gentle, firm yet compassionate. Through this balance, love deepens. He begins to honor the feminine not as something external, but as a living principle within himself. The feminine is his intuition, his creativity, his compassion, his receptivity. By embracing these aspects, he becomes whole. The man who rejects his inner feminine becomes emotionally cold. The one who embraces her becomes wise. This is why true masculinity is not domination, but integration. It is the blending of strength and softness, action and stillness, reason and intuition. When a man achieves this balance, he radiates an energy that heals rather than harms. But even in awareness, the path is not without pain. There will be moments when he feels misunderstood, moments when others misinterpret his silence, moments when love does not unfold the way his mind expects. Yet in those moments, he remembers that awareness is not about escaping suffering. It is about meeting it consciously. Pain becomes his teacher, solitude becomes his temple, and patience becomes his discipline. He learns that not every connection is meant to last, but every connection is meant to evolve him. Some people are there to open his heart, others are there to close old wounds. When he sees this, gratitude replaces regret. He begins to move through the world differently. He listens more than he speaks. He observes more than he reacts. He acts not to impress, but to align. He stops chasing outcomes and starts flowing with intention. His life becomes less about achieving and more about attuning. Each day becomes a meditation in awareness. Each breath becomes a reminder of impermanence. The awakened man walks with grace because he knows that life is fleeting and that everything he clings to will one day pass. This understanding makes him cherish what is present without holding it hostage to expectation. He also learns that love is not always gentle. Sometimes love arrives as loss, as distance, as silence, but even in those forms, it teaches him. Love that leaves still leaves lessons. Love that ends still expands the heart. Awareness allows him to honor endings as sacred as beginnings. He no longer fights against closure. He accepts it as part of the cycle. For he knows that endings are not failures. They are transitions into deeper states of being. As his consciousness expands, he starts to sense the interconnectedness of everything. He feels that no experience is wasted, no person is random, and no moment is separate from the whole. This awareness fills him with humility. He understands that his actions ripple through the collective, that his words carry energy beyond what the ear can hear. He becomes mindful not out of fear, but out of reverence. Every gesture, every conversation, every silence becomes sacred because he sees the divine in all things. He also learns to hold space for others' journeys without judgment. He realizes that not everyone will meet him at the same depth, and that's okay. Awakening cannot be forced. It unfolds in its own rhythm. He no longer tries to fix people. He simply offers presence, knowing that presence itself heals more than advice ever could. His love becomes less about changing others and more about accepting them. Acceptance does not mean tolerating harm. It means understanding that every soul is exactly where it needs to be for its evolution. Through all this, humility remains his anchor. The deeper he goes, the more he realizes how little he truly knows. He no longer seeks to be the teacher or the guru. He becomes the student of life. The more he surrenders to this truth, the lighter he becomes. The need to be right dissolves. The desire to be seen fades. The compulsion to prove vanishes. What remains is simplicity, pure, honest, radiant simplicity. When he interacts with the world, his energy speaks louder than his words. He may walk into a room and say nothing, yet people feel calmer. He may listen quietly while others speak, yet his silence feels like understanding. This is the silent power of awareness. It does not demand attention, it emanates it. True wisdom does not shout, it vibrates. And those who are ready feel it. He learns that mastery is not control, but balance. It is not about suppressing emotions, but channeling them. Anger becomes courage. Desire becomes creativity. Fear becomes awareness. Every emotion, when met with consciousness, transforms into energy that serves growth. This is the alchemy of an awakened life. The transmutation of darkness into light, of reaction into response, of attachment into love. The man who lives this way stops seeking external validation because he has found inner peace. He understands that no recognition can add to his worth and no rejection can take it away. His sense of self is rooted not in achievements or relationships, but in awareness itself. This stability makes him magnetic, not because he chases, but because he embodies. People are drawn to him not because of what he has, but because of what he is: calm, grounded, real. As he deepens into stillness, he begins to see beauty everywhere, in the quiet of dawn, in the imperfection of life, in the laughter of strangers, even in moments of loss. Awareness sharpens his perception, and gratitude fills his heart. He realizes that the purpose of awakening is not to escape the human experience, but to live it fully, with eyes open, heart open, and spirit free. This is what it means to be truly alive, not to chase pleasure or avoid pain, but to embrace the totality of existence with grace. The awakened man lives with gentleness, not because he is weak, but because he understands strength. He forgives not because he forgets, but because he refuses to carry poison in his soul. He loves not because he needs, but because he has become love itself. And so he continues his journey, not as a seeker chasing enlightenment, but as a being living in awareness. He walks through the world knowing that every step, every breath, every meeting, and every farewell is sacred. He carries within him the quiet, knowing that life is not happening to him, it is happening through him. And that realization is the beginning of true freedom. When a man meets a woman at the level of soul, not body, something ancient awakens inside him. He begins to remember that his strength was never meant to dominate, but to protect, that his energy was never meant to conquer, but to harmonize. In her presence, his walls start to tremble, and what he once called control becomes transparency. He starts to feel again, deeply, painfully, beautifully. The noise of his ego quiets, and the silence of his truth begins to speak. This is where he realizes that the act of closeness is not a pursuit of pleasure, but a prayer of remembrance. He is reminded that connection is not about taking something, but about returning something sacred that was lost. The ability to feel without defense, to love without strategy, to give without counting. When a man opens himself to that kind of union, he is no longer a wanderer seeking validation. He becomes a vessel through which the divine masculine meets the divine feminine. His emotions, once hidden behind ambition and pride, begin to purify. Every tear he hides, every word he swallows, every fear he refuses to face, these dissolve in the warmth of her acceptance. For perhaps the greatest truth is that the masculine heart heals not through victory, but through surrender. And this surrender is not weakness. It is the highest form of courage. It is the moment he stops running from himself and starts seeing the woman not as a mirror for his desires, but as a mirror for his growth. In that recognition, something soft yet powerful takes place. He no longer needs to pretend that he knows everything. He no longer fights to prove he is worthy of love. He simply learns to be present, to hold space for her laughter, her silence, her chaos, and her calm. He begins to understand that true intimacy is not about bodies colliding, but about energies aligning. And when that alignment happens, the experience transcends emotion. It becomes a spiritual practice, the kind that cleanses the soul, resets the mind, and awakens both beings to something higher than themselves. The man who understands this no longer fears vulnerability. He sees that within every moment of exposure, there is the potential for rebirth. He learns that the heart's purpose is not to remain guarded, but to remain open, even when it hurts. He learns that love is not found in perfection, but in the courage to stay when things become imperfect. And he learns that a woman's energy, when approached with reverence, can heal the parts of him that even time could not reach. She becomes not his possession, but his teacher. And he becomes not her protector, but her equal. Every touch, every word, every shared silence then transforms into a meditation, a sacred act of awakening. It teaches both souls that love is not found in the excitement of beginnings, but in the discipline of presence. That fulfillment does not come from taking what feels good, but from honoring what feels true. The more he learns to listen, the more he realizes that real connection is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is a vibration that deepens with awareness. When a man reaches this level of consciousness, he can no longer engage with a woman unconsciously. He can no longer hide behind the illusions of pride or control. He begins to understand that the real power of a man lies not in what he can do to a woman, but in what he can awaken within her, and what she, in turn, awakens within him. For that awakening is mutual. It dissolves the distance between the two, not by merging them into one, but by teaching them how to stand beside each other in truth, with open eyes and open hearts. And so, what begins as attraction transforms into alchemy. The meeting of two souls becomes a bridge between worlds, the world of the seen and the unseen, the world of the physical and the spiritual. Through her, he learns empathy. Through him, she learns safety. Through their connection, both rediscover the sacred rhythm of life, the ebb and flow, the giving and receiving, the dying of the old, and the birth of the new. If there is one thing a man discovers through this journey, it is that love is not something he finds, it is something he becomes. And when he becomes love, every encounter, every embrace, every moment of presence becomes holy. That is the ultimate transformation, the return to essence, the remembering of what he truly is beyond all masks, desires, and fears, a being capable of depth, tenderness, and truth, a being capable of meeting another not through need, but through awareness. And in that meeting, something eternal unfolds. A silence that does not separate but unites, a stillness that does not end but continues to echo through both souls long after the moment has passed.